I came back to my hotel room and I noticed that the door was ajar. So the very first thing that I started to do is to check for bugs. I checked the room, I checked my clothes, my suitcase, and so on. I didn't find anything, but actually immediately, as soon as I entered the room, I felt a very unpleasant, a very strong smell of some, I don't know, spray of some deodorant or some perfume. What started to worry me was numbness of my hands and feet and along the spine, as if my body was being frozen. Our fight is very dangerous, and the Kremlin's agents networks are very deep in the West, and it's important to remember that.
Natalia, several months ago, you had a health scare, and that situation was one in which we weren't able to talk about it because of clearly, I think it was under investigation. I'm not sure what the situation is now, but there was some concern that you had been poisoned. What
Yeah.
can you tell us about that situation?
Yes. So there was an alleged poison in early May, and I didn't want to be public about that because almost immediately there was an investigation by the U.S. authorities started. It's still ongoing. I still don't have the final results, and but it happened so that the journalist learned about my case, plus there were other similar cases of various journalists and activists exiled from Russia that happened in several countries. And so there were investigations on such cases, and again in mid-May, and then later in August there was the second wave of these articles about our cases, and I started to talk about it more because it's important for the exiled community to understand what happened and to be more prepared to possible risks and threats, and that's why I started again to talk to the media, just explaining the situation, but also addressing to the exiled Russian communities that we are not safe even being in immigration, not being inside Russia, and also addressing Western audiences that to realize that our fight is very dangerous, and again, we are a target anywhere, and this is a national security for many democratic countries because the Kremlin's agents networks are very deep in the West, and it's important to remember that and to counter that.
Yeah, you mentioned the situation that happened to you, but a lot of people may not know what it was that happened. Tell us
Yes.
exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, so I was traveling to Europe, which I do very often because of my work. We are helping exiled Russian activists, journalists, and human rights defenders, lawyers, and so on, to get better adjusted in their life outside of Russia, and to be more efficient in their work and their activities to fight against Putin's regime. We also have other programs, including in Ukraine and on Belarus and so on. But so I have to travel a lot, and I was in Berlin and in Prague. In Berlin, there was a public event. Again, also such an event that could have attracted some interest from the Kremlin because it was about the consolidation and better coordination among various pro-democracy and anti-war forces. But then I went to Prague and I attended a closed event. And after that event, I came back to my hotel room and I noticed that the door was ajar. And again, the first idea was, well, maybe some like KGB, or now it's called FSB officer or GRU officer is waiting for me there. But I was laughing at myself at this thought. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe the maid really forgot it, but it was very untypical because I travel a lot. I have never seen a hotel door open. I went inside, and for us, pro-democracy Russians, anti-regime Russians, surveillance is the norm. So we are very used to being recorded, being followed, being surveilled. So I thought that, again, nobody is in my room physically, but maybe they planted some bugs, some listening recording devices. So the very first thing that I started to do is to check for bugs. I checked the room, I checked my clothes, my suitcase, and so on. I didn't find anything, but actually immediately, as soon as I entered the room, I felt a very unpleasant, a very strong smell of some, I don't know, spray of some deodorant or some perfume, like very, very strong, very visible, very unpleasant, like cheap, too sweet. And it was weird. And but since I didn't find any devices, any bugs, I was relieved. I thought, okay, I need to go to other meetings. So I changed, left my hotel room. I complained to the reception. They were very worried. They said, yes, this is probably the maid. What is missing of your belongings? And I said, I'm not worried about robbery. I'm more worried about safety. And so I had to go to other meetings. When I came back, there was no such a distinct smell in the room any longer. So I worked some more, went to bed quite late, which is typical when you're on the trip. And 3 hours later at 5 a.m., I woke up from a very sharp dental pain. Like really, it was unbearable. I was almost like losing my conscience of such a pain. I usually quite good of tolerating the pain, and it was something that even I couldn't tolerate. And I thought I won't be able just to stay in Prague for the entire day and have more meetings. And then I was supposed to go back to Berlin and have even more meetings, and then go back to the US. So I immediately changed the flight. So it was 5 a.m. and I found the earliest flight back home for 9 a.m. I asked my son to make a dentist appointment, and there was no even suspicion that it could be poisoning, because if I had even a slightest suspicion, I would probably wouldn't dare to go on a transatlantic flight and without any medical attention for so many hours. So I rushed to the to the airport, and on the plane, I already started to feel all kinds of symptoms. Well, what started to worry me was numbness of my hands and feet and along the spine, as if my body was being frozen. And this is also the same symptoms, and actually later it was confirmed that the same diagnosis, polyneuropathy, the same as Vladimir Karamurza has, our former vice president, who is now in a Russian jail, sentenced to 25 years for working for an undesirable organization, the Russia Foundation, for state treason, and for discrediting the Russian army because he was telling the truth about the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. And then I also felt, so as you remember, I said that it started with a dental pain and I thought I need to see a dentist, but then the pain started to wander all around my body. It wasn't a dental pain anymore. I had very sharp pain in my armpits and in my stomach, in my eyes, in my ears, in my throat, in my chest. It was wandering, as if organs were failing one by one. And so it was very scary. I had blurry vision. I had headache. I had a very weird taste in my mouth, some rock, some mineral taste. So it was quite scary. I don't know how I was able to get to the US. And so very soon, so it was already the evening of May 3rd. And the next day I had this already scheduled dentist appointment. I went there and the dentist said everything is fine with your teeth, no worries, you're fine. But by that time I already felt very unwell, so I was almost immediately admitted to the emergency room. And since I was in pain, the doctors wanted to give me some painkillers. And I told them, please don't take all the tests, all possible tests, so that they're as clean as possible. If there is anything, then you will be able to catch it better without any medication. By that time, I already knew that there are similar cases of journalists, Russian journalists and activists in several locations. I knew that some of them their tests were run in the Charité clinic in Berlin. This is a clinic where, when Alexei Navalny, Russian opposition leader, was poisoned with Novichok, he was in coma for many days. He was brought to the Charité clinic. He was treated there. So it's one of the best clinics on that. And so it was quite concerning. And then again, an American intelligence service interfered and all that. And so all my tests were run by the clinic in Virginia, and then they ran their tests, laboratory tests. They were with the chemical laboratory first. They almost immediately said it's not Novichok, it's something different. So, and maybe just to finish, still there is an ongoing investigation. I still don't know the details. What I know is my neurologist. I went to the neurology center in Washington D.C. I also some tests were done. Some diagnosis was made, and so this is polyneuropathy. The neurologist said that there is no magic pill. I just need, so hopefully in a year my nerves will regenerate. She advised me to have less stress and more exercises. I told her I can have more exercises. I cannot have less stress when there is an ongoing war and so much happening. So, but I am used to it now. I feel much better. I know how to deal with it. At least I know not to be scared when some part of my body is frozen, is completely numb. Especially when the first time it happened with my face, it was quite scary. But now again, I know I can at least deal with it. I have some devices. I do some massages, some exercises, and so I'm used to this.
Natalia, who do you think did this?
Well, again, since there are no confirmations, no final results of the investigations, though some Russian investigative journalists, some Western investigative journalists made some of their work, and there are some articles and investigations released, and it's a very typical method of Russia, and moreover, between different agencies, between different groups in Russia, also the way how they try to silence their opponents is also different. For example, there is a Chechen president Ramzan Kadyrov, and his troops, we call them Kadyrovites. They usually use guns, like it was, they shot a person, Khangashvili, in Berlin, in Tiergarten, quite the center of Berlin, a few years ago. So they usually use weapons, machine guns, to shoot opponents. But if it's poisoning, it's usually GRU, Russian Intelligence Service Agency. And actually, the list of those who were murdered or attempted to murder by poisoning, it's quite long. Just again, examples, very known examples, like Alexander Litvinenko in London was poisoned with polonium in 2006. There was an attempt to murder Skripal, and he was with his daughter in 2018 in London. There was this Alexei Navalny's poisoning with Novichok. There was the poisoning of Vladimir Karamurza, who I already mentioned, by the same team of assassins in 2015 and 2017. So list is long, and even now it's again a new wave of those attacks, because again it's not only me, it's several activists and journalists in several places. It happened to me more likely in Prague. There was again the Berlin investigation on one journalist, then another journalist had it probably in Georgia, in the country of Georgia, and so again, their tentacles are very long and deep, unfortunately, in the West.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Natalia, one more thing. We have maybe a minute or so left before we have to go, but so you know what you know. You're going through this situation, and we know what we know about these habits that Russian operatives engage in. What's your message to Russian expats here in the U.S.?
To all expats, not only to the US, but anybody who fled Putin's regime, who are now in various countries, to know that it's not safe anywhere. Kremlin's tentacles are very long. Kremlin's regime is very brutal, brazen, murderous, and vindictive. But it's kind of weird badge of honor. If they target us, it means that we are very effective. It means that we irritate them. We do something, like we advocate for sanctions. We are doing everything to stop the war, to help Ukraine, and all this, like, or counter Kremlin's propaganda and so on and so forth. So we are very effective, very important, and that's why they target us. So we shouldn't be scared, but we should be more committed to our fight. And again, we know who they are, and just we should be, of course, more mindful of our security protocols. We were more careful about digital security, about not being surveilled, but now we should really increase our physical security protocols.
Well, Natalia, thank you for talking to us. We're glad you're better.
Thank you.
We hope that you will remain safe, and we hope that everyone you're talking to here listens and follows your advice, because this is a very scary situation, and it by no means is over. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Always nice to talk to you. Bye.